And welcome to the Daily Space Weather. We are delighted to have you. I'm your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We've got a fairly quiet sun for the past 24 hours, and we'll cover it in a great detail indeed. This is the GOES SUVI, 131 plus 171 angstroms. And let's get a little closer and not be shy. So there's the equatorial zoom. Again, we've got a fairly quiet sun since yesterday. We've got a very high likelihood of coronal mass ejections to continue. We've got a huge amount of filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, and those filaments are known to turn into coronal mass ejections. We've also got an active region rising in both the northeast and, let's don't forget, the southeast. So these sunspots are not yet classified as such. There's that active region rising in the southeast. We do see the magnetic field rising over the solar disk, and we'll see if that is indeed a sunspot by the end of the video. We've also got some other fresh wavelengths for you. Here is the SUVI, the GOES, it's the GOES 18, I think, SUVI, 304 angstroms, depicting ionized helium. So let's take a moment here to take a look at sunspots and magnetic fields briefly before we look at some more space weather facts. I would also note that there is a Hyder flare going on up here. You can see some plasma reorienting and splashing back down toward the chromosphere. You can see that brightening going on up there, a common feature of plasma reorientations. So a lot of times those filaments, they end up becoming a coronal mass ejection, as that one did. And that material splashes back down toward the solar surface. So let's briefly move on here. I'll let that play through one more time. We'll take a quick look at... That's a nice one. We'll take a quick look at magnetic fields and sunspots here. Today we're using the Gong 2. So there's the Gong 2 data. That's the ground-based observatory at El Teide, Spain. As you can see there, not a lot of changes since yesterday. Fairly stable activity there. Those are the magnetic fields. And here is the Gong intensity gram. It's basically just a continuum of visible light there. And again, those sunspots largely stable since yesterday. We're going to talk more about space, volcanoes, earthquakes, and lots more. It's been very quiet for earthquakes. Exceedingly quiet, in fact. And before we get to that, don't forget to press like and subscribe. If you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the most detailed space weather and imagery of the sun in the world exists. If you didn't see yesterday's video, make sure you check out the Diamond Anvil Too Hard to Smash. The latest installment features Eugene the Philosopher, so make sure you subscribe to his channel. Let's play you a little tidbit here. Here's a little tidbit from our video yesterday. The Hirschsprung-Russell diagram. It's a reference to the idea that viewing the color and diameter and brightness of a star, you can figure out at what point that star is in its life cycle. So we're talking about stellar cosmology there for a brief moment, as it is an ongoing theme on the channel. Part of the reason why we cover space weather and heliophysics is because we're looking to advance the cosmology. So is Eugene. Make sure you check out his recent paper, Asymmetries in Solar Flares. So that's all linked below the video, as well as Eugene's video about it. So again, make sure you go subscribe to Eugene the Philosopher. If you haven't, check out his video about anisotropy and solar flares. He's got a video about it as well, and that is called More Flares at the Limb. Find out all about it on Eugene's channel, and we talk about it in yesterday's video as well. So let's take a brief moment at earthquakes and volcanoes, starting with volcanoes. Here's what's erupting at the moment. Shivaluch is producing a 12,000-foot ash plume as it explodes on the Kamchatka Peninsula. It's a flight level 120. Abiko, flight level 100 over Paramushir Island. Subanose Jima unknown volcanic ash plume there. Now, Mount Mayon in the Philippines appears to continue to be upticking in activity as glowing lava blocks frequently detach from the lava flow and roll over the southern Miisi Island in the southeastern Basud Giles, descending approximately 2 kilometers distance from the summit. Please don't pole vault the caldera at Mount Mayon. Semeru also erupting, producing a 14,000-foot ash plume. That's a flight level 140. Dacono producing a 7,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. Flight level 070, headed down to central Mexico. Popocatépetl exploding. 22,000-foot ash plume. 15,000-foot ash plume from Fuego. Possible emissions from Sangay, no indication on a flight level there. Flight level 140 over Revenador. It's a 14,000-foot ash plume as Revenador explodes. No volcanic emissions from Cotopaxi and Sabancaya exploding, producing a 24,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. It's a flight level 240. Seismically speaking, the planet has been astoundingly quiet in the past 24 hours. Very low levels of seismic activity, a very low number of quakes, period, and a very low number of 5+ magnitude quakes. We'll report those 5 and larger magnitude earthquakes. If there are any, I think there's maybe one. But very quiet, seismically speaking. And of course, statistical probability is one of the ways that earthquakes can actually be forecasted. It looks like the largest quake of the past 24 came in just a couple of hours before we produced this show. It was a 5.0 at India. That was at 8:03 Universal Time this morning, and it's time to get back to space. So here's some more GOES SUVI imagery for you. That's 304 angstroms, and let's add 195 angstroms to give it a little bit of additional detail there. Again, you can see that Hyder flare happening in the northwestern limb. That was accompanied by a coronal mass ejection as well. Another great example of a bunch of plasma blasting off toward the north, and some of that plasma splashing back down toward the chromosphere. Here's a little closer view of that. That's some spectacular imagery for you there. So it looks like multiple CMEs actually happening there. You can see the tail end of yesterday's events and then today's events. So pretty exciting stuff there. Here's the equatorial view in these wavelengths. And by way of completeness, we're showing you the southern hemisphere as well. So again, there are still a lot of plasma filaments attached to the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. Likelihood of coronal mass ejections continues to be nearly 100%. Let's take a look at some more space weather stats here. That's starting with a 10.7 centimeter radial flux, which has dipped since yesterday. Now it's all the way down to 146 solar flux units. 146 is the 10.7 centimeter radial flux number, often referred to as the F107. There is the 1-year graph to put that in context. It's the black line. And you can see how proportional that is to the red line, the sunspot number. As far as space weather forecasts go, NOAA's not forecasting any geomagnetic storms or geomagnetic unrest. We are expecting an uptick here in a few days because of a coronal hole. We'll get to that momentarily. First, Earth's magnetic moment from space for the past 4 hours. That is our Geospace Magnetosphere movie. We show it daily on the channel, since people are worried that Earth's magnetic field is going to mysteriously shut down for some unexplainable mechanism. But it's clearly not shut down, according to the Space Weather Modeling Framework, which uses many different variables to calculate Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here's Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. It's our Ground Magnetic Perturbations movie. If you want to read about the Space Weather Modeling Framework, click on the Details tab at the bottom of the page. You'll get a link to the Space Weather Modeling Framework. You can download all the software and create your own model if you like. That is the University of Michigan Geospace Model V2.0. KP index currently at 2. Again, geomagnetically calm conditions here at the moment. KP2 is the planetary K index, an average of global geomagnetism. And we did see some intensifications in the solar wind here in the past 24 hours. It made it up to nearly 500 kilometers per second, as we have been seeing a rather weak coronal hole wind stream. It's actually probably two different coronal hole wind streams here, and current conditions are pretty unremarkable. 450 kilometers a second for the solar wind velocity, solar wind density, just under 5.3 protons per cubic centimeter. Next, we'll look at magnetic data. There are your GOES magnetometers. Pretty smooth here, despite coronal hole high-speed streams. Again, they are weak coronal hole high-speed streams. There's a stronger one coming. We'll talk about it here momentarily. And here is our top view ecliptic plane field plot. This depicts the heliospheric current sheet. Plasma flowing out of the sun here is polarized. Earth lies in a south pole current sheet at the moment, depicted there in red. No changes coming to that in the near future. Keep in mind the magnetic environment can change with basically no warning. Another important point here is this feature right here, that North Pole magnetism hanging out at the North Heliographic Pole. We are waiting for that to migrate toward the equator before we could say things like, hey, it's solar maximum. So here's our line of sight field plot. You can see this sector boundary crossing right there in blue. That's the solar B field. Again, just a couple of days ago, Earth has crossed into the South Pole current sheet. And we've got a rather well-defined transequatorial coronal hole here rotating in. So here's our coronal hole line of sight plot, and you can see all that red over there on the east side. Those are those South Pole-oriented coronal holes. So we're actually going to show today, we're going to show the GOES SUVI 195 angstroms wavelength. There are the past about 2 hours. And this coronal hole, we can expect to see a high-speed wind from that in under 3 days. So that should produce a significant intensification in the solar wind. It could even produce maybe some minor geomagnetic storm conditions, maybe a KP5 or a low KP6, sort of a geomagnetic storm. Again, probably it's going to be mild, but you never know. By the way, if you want to follow coronal holes in a more in-depth fashion, check out solon.info. There's a whole coronal hole history dating all the way back to October of 2002. That coronal hole is known as coronal hole 1153. So it is of the transequatorial type, and those are our favorite kind as they are the most geo-effective. So anyway, expecting a high-speed stream from this coronal hole in under 3 days. So by late in the day on the 15th, we'll expect to see a density increase in the solar wind from that. Next, moving to sunspots. And I don't know what's going on with the naming of these sunspots in the southeast. It looks like they have largely evaporated. However, there are 2 new sunspot regions rising, as we said earlier. 2 new sunspots likely rising, one in the southeast and one in the northeast. As far as the GOES proton flux goes, it goes flat. There you go. It's flatlined. We haven't seen a solar energetic particle event for quite some time. And we do see an increase here in the X-ray flux, another indication that those active regions that are rising are indeed sunspots. We don't see any major intensification going on, but so that's a fairly good hypothesis there, that increase in the background X-ray flux is caused by those new active regions. We have seen some flaring out of them already, so let's take a look at that in our... This is the GOES 16, not the GOES 6, it's the GOES, I'll just say it's the GOES SUVI. I'm not sure which spacecraft it is. The GOES SUVI, that's depicting 131 plus 94 angstroms. So again, if you look in the northeast, you can see some significant brightening going on up there. Also in the southeast. So those are the main suspects as to why the flare profile is rising. I mean, there is a little bit of an X-ray output caused by these hider flares that you see up here, but besides that, I suspect that it is from mainly this northeastern active region. Moving right along, to talk about what's going on overhead. Now, if you want to create your own star chart, this one is from skyandtelescope.org. It's what I like to use, and if you're up before dawn, you may see Saturn high in the sky, a crescent moon up there, as well as Jupiter. Sometimes the fourth brightest object, sometimes the fifth brightest object when Mars is brighter. You may also see Mercury rising ahead of the sun. That's what's going on currently over Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, where we're located. And before we get back to space, let's talk a little bit about our forum. So we created a massive web ring in order to support this content and in order to help out people like you, the viewer. And of course, part of our mission is to help out mankind in general. We're trying to advance cosmology and human technology. Those are sort of the most important things. The mission is to assist, study, and report on the ongoing formation of a unified theory of physics. Yeah, we're a science foundation. To raise the awareness of the general public of the relationship between space weather and Earth effects. A lot of people aren't familiar with it and think that it is some kind of a conspiracy theory. Also to connect and consult with media organizations to multiply our reach. So don't forget to press the share button and help us out with that, since the videos are often not recommended on YouTube. Also to demonstrate cutting-edge proof-of-concept solutions to problems. We grow tomatoes and potatoes inside over the winter. What about you? We've got all kinds of proof-of-concept solutions to problems. We'll provide a little more of those in just a moment here. Also to publish scientific papers in a multidisciplinary manner, including but not limited to the sciences listed before you there. Also to assist mankind with advancing the study of predictive phenomenon in order to optimize value, reduce risk and liability, and save lives and resources no matter what the adversity is. Now that's an important one to understand, folks, because predictive phenomenon is real science, and that's what we're interested in. We are not interested in very much science that has zero predictive value, although theoretical stuff is important. Lastly, we strive to not be ossified in our beliefs and to treat those who are with love, respect, and inclusion to the scientific discussion, as lots of people are ossified in their beliefs. Today's featured product on the Amazon shop is L-lysine. Yeah, L-lysine. Did you know that essential amino acids cannot be produced within the body and must be taken in through diet? One of those essential amino acids is super important, L-lysine. It is responsible for the production of hormones, enzymes, and antibodies. If you're not getting enough of it, you'll be unhealthy. So why not check the other supplement choices there as well in the Amazon shop? It's Amazon.com/shop/Smashomash, and you can link below the video to that, as well as on the homepage, the official homepage of the Smash News Network, least busted name in news, Smashomash.com. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. We're frankly surprised that you have. Smashomash.com. Visit us over there for additional content. Become a member of the Smash team. More on that later. Become a Twitter follower. If you'd like to name filaments after living people, follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament over on Twitter. And we're all over the internet at Smashomash. So you'll see content over there that is unrelated to space weather, as well as content that is related to space weather that you won't find anyplace else. Also follow us on Instagram. If you're not familiar with that content, you'll find diet and fitness stuff over there, lifestyle stuff, etc., like posts about cycling and so on. Your daily motivation, perhaps. Lastly, today's featured product is the Galactic Federation Special Forces. So I say to each of you, Universum Liberate. That should probably frighten people. They'll think that we're a CIA shill, or that I'm part of the Illuminati, or that I'm funded by government organizations, which is something that couldn't be further from the truth. I've never been funded by taxpayer dollars in my life. I've never been part of any military, police organization, intelligence organization, government body, etc. Zero affiliation with such bureaucracies. I've been independent from day one, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon. So I say to each of you, Universum Liberate, because if I could wave my magic wand, I'd set everybody free, and if that's too reckless for you, it's probably because you're weak, pathetic, and frightened. The Galactic Federation Special Forces, they're out there saving the galaxy from all those nasty, nasty reptilians. So support the Galactic Federation Special Forces by picking up some of our merch and bring peace to the galaxy. Anyway, next, our solar system forecast from theplanetstoday.com. This is where things are today. Let's advance it 1 week as a new moon is approaching. That's where things will be. In 7 days, we will have a crescent waxing moon on June 20th, 1 day before the solstice. Next, coronagraphs, and we do have another CME happening. It came out of the northern hemisphere, right near the North Crown region. We actually showed you the massive detail of this one yesterday. So that's yesterday's CMEs. Another one coming out of the west there. That also does not look like it's earthly directed. So that's 101 frames from yesterday. And here we've got some frames from today as well. Again, another CME propagating as we create the video coming out of the North Polar region. Again, does not appear to be earthly directed. But let's take a look at some more coronagraphs here just to make sure. Unfortunately, the data here from the Soho Lasco C2 and C3 is quite old there. It's about, well, it looks like it's coming back. Let me just see here. Latest images there, 10, 12. All right, it's basically back on point here, following some missing data. There you can see another major CME coming out of the northern hemisphere. Once again, not likely to be earthly directed. We'll also show the view from Stereo A. And thanks for leaving a comment to Tim3. Good morning to you as well. So here you've got Stereo A over on the left. You've got Soho Lasco C3 over on the right. These are yesterday's spectacular CMEs. And if you want to see more detail of that, make sure you watch yesterday's shorts or yesterday's daily space weather video. We showed some fantastic slow motion imagery, both of the CME at the sun's level and CMEs at the coronagraph level. And here at the end you see that latest CME. Again, does not appear to be earthly directed. And let's move to filaments. So there's a filament fest going on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, as evidenced by the data here from El Teide, Spain's ground-based hydrogen alpha telescope. Let's count filaments. 1. That one's too unstable to count. We'll say 2. That one just ejected. So 3, 4. There's still at least 5 major filaments on the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk, which once again brings the likelihood of coronal mass ejections to nearly 100%. What can I say? Expect more CMEs despite a lull in solar activity. Also, again, coronal hole high-speed wind coming in less than 3 days. Next, the last couple of hours from the GOES, it's the GOES 18 SUVI. That's the 304 angstroms wavelength. And there is a lot of instability continuing to go on over here. Also down here in the southeast. So the northwest and southeast are sort of the least stable plasma portions of the sun. And the northeast is the most flare-producing point, it looks like. And let's get to our bonus features segment. Satellite charging hazards are minor. We have some surface charging hazards here over Mexico and the eastern Pacific. Those shouldn't amount to much. Surface charging hazards are caused by low-energy electrons that build up on the outsides of spacecraft. There is the GOES electron flux over the past 3 days. That is measured at the F layer of the ionosphere using radiography by the GOES 16 and GOES 18. There is the 1-year graph to put it in context. We're seeing low levels of electron flux, as is the most common situation with coronal hole high-speed streams, even when they're weak like the current one. And you can see there a little bit lower levels than NOAA forecasted. NOAA expecting a minor uptick there in the electron flux. And next we'll show the F layer of the ionosphere. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with distances, chemical concentrations in kilometers, etc. Here is the vibrational frequency of the F ionosphere. So things looking fairly normal here. We'll show the anomalygram as well, since this might not be super clear to you. Here's the anomalygram. That's anomaly in megahertz from a 30-day median as we approach the solstice. Let's briefly bring up the latest image after that plays through once more. Nothing too exciting going on in the ionosphere at the moment. There's the latest image, 11 o'clock Universal Time ionogram and 11 o'clock Universal Time anomalygram. Total electron content is free electrons up to about 12,500 miles of altitude, the location of your GPS satellite. Feel free to pause the video on this frame if you're not familiar with distances in miles to things like the Outer Van Allen Belt, Inner Van Allen Belt, the International Space Station's altitude in miles, and so on. Here is the total electron content. Free electrons from the surface to the inner portion of the Outer Van Allen Belt. The coupled thermosphere, ionosphere, plasmasphere electrodynamics model. We've got a lot of electrons out of place there in the southern hemisphere, so expect some significant GPS errors there, especially south of the equator. That is the worldwide map. And we'll also show the North American map to show anomalies from the 10-day average there. That's anomalies in total electron content from the 10-day average over North America. It'll depict high electron counts in red and low electron count anomalies in blue. And we do actually see some here over the central U.S., north central U.S., and also some around the western U.S. I'll let it play through one more time. Again, that's the total electron content anomaly from the 10-day average. We'll close out the space weather section with the latest intensitygram and latest colorized magnetogram. So again, we've got this magnetic field here rising. I don't see the likelihood of any ombre there. But there is a new sunspot to the north of that region. So we've got multiple sunspots down here in the southeast. I don't know why they're not named. I mean, there are multiple, at least 3 sunspot groups there that ought to have names. They've been there for days. Somebody's dropped the ball on this one. As far as this northern group, we don't see any fields rising yet there. So, yeah, sunspots, at least 3 groups ought to be named in the southeast. Let's move on to meteorology. And I've got a forecast to kick off the meteorology segment. The forecast is Earth's rotation is about to slow down. Why is that? Why is that? Well, the reason is because we know that Earth's rotation is related to, well, to climate. Because when there is more water or warmer water in the oceans, it increases the size of Earth's equatorial bulge. So this heating of the Pacific equatorial ocean is probably going to expand the ocean. So you're going to see stories coming out later this year about how Earth's rotation has now slowed again. That is probably a result of more water in the oceans and less water at the poles. Also, hot water takes up more space than cool water, so similar to a figure skater spinning around. When the Earth's equatorial bulge grows, the rotation spins, the rotation speeds up. I mean, when the bulge grows, Earth's rotation slows down. When the bulge shrinks, it speeds up. A speeding up Earth is an indication that more ice is being deposited at the poles, or that oceans are getting colder, again, because cold water takes up less space than hot water. So forecasting a decrease in Earth's rotational speed, an increase in the amount of time in a day, caused solely by this increase in temperature of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. The largest expanse of water in the world, both from north to south and from east to west, the Pacific Ocean. There's a lot of water there, and it's super relevant. So anyway, what we're looking at here is ocean currents and sea surface temperature anomaly. You've got cold water in the north, you've got warm water around the equator, anomalously warm water, more anomalously warm water up in the north. Here's what's going on for the Gulf Stream. For everybody who thinks the Gulf Stream is going to shut down, you're going to see a year without a summer in Europe. Once again, not happening. Look at how warm the water is up here by Ireland and the North Atlantic. The Gulf Stream, it's not shutting down, and neither is the North Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation. It's just not shutting down. That is sea surface temperature anomaly and ocean currents. So there's the full Pacific Ocean view. Here's the Southern Ocean view. Here's the Atlantic Ocean view. And let's don't forget the Indian Ocean. Pretty normal temperatures there. And here is the Arctic. And let's move on to our regularly scheduled meteorology segment. So here we're going to show wind. There is the surface wind scenario for our pals in the eastern world as this tropical typhoon is making landfall there near India. Here are the jet streams for the east. Jet streams to the west. We have a much more coherent jet stream over the U.S., so weather patterns should get a little bit more normal. And there's a drought update coming, by the way, a drought update. There are the surface winds of the western world. Strong low pressure systems continue in the northern Atlantic. Here are the surface winds of the central world. That's looking like a pretty strong system there. We talked about the hot water that's fueling that convection yesterday. And there is the jet stream scenario. No, hurricanes are absolutely nothing like sunspots. They are basically the opposite of sunspots. They're more like coronal holes. If somebody's telling you that sunspots and hurricanes are similar, that person might be an imbecile. Next, we're looking at a drought map here from Check Globe, and check it out. The extreme drought conditions in Pennsylvania have subsided quite a bit as we finally got some rain. So it was well needed for the state of Pennsylvania. Things much better than they were just a couple of days ago. That is your drought map from windy.com and Check Globe. Next, this is clouds and fog over the South Pacific, the South Atlantic, South America, the Caribbean, the North Pacific, the North Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, and the lower 48. Clouds and fog depicted by shortwave radiation. And let's take a look at the weather.gov map briefly. Some excessive heat warnings continue in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana. There's your key to show you a little bit of the weather warnings there. If your location is lit, you'll have to head to weather.gov and click on your location there to get your own weather warnings. Dense fog advisories there showing up in Maine. Next, the jet stream forecast. This is what we expect the jet stream to do over the next 72 hours. The southern portion is going to be a little more coherent than the northern portion. And yeah, that's the scenario for the next 72 hours based on a GFS model. The jet stream, a lot more coherent than it was just a few days ago. We've also got the temperature anomaly forecast, since there are some extreme temperature anomalies here showing up, especially in places like Texas. It's mostly cold in most of the country here, unseasonably cold. Those purple color shades indicate like 12, 14, 16 degrees Celsius below normal temperatures for this time of year. That is your GFS 72-hour temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. And here's your pressure and precipitation forecast based on the same GFS 72-hour model. So heavy storms there coming to Kansas in the next 3 days. Also, Nebraska and the Dakotas are expecting to see some severe storms. And also the Gulf states, once again, Georgia is expected to get kaplastered here. Some of those storms could produce damaging wind and hail, so make sure you pay attention to that. Again, that's a 72-hour GFS pressure and precipitation forecast. Let's show lightning next. There's the last about 10 hours of lightning. And how about a real-time lightning map? Here is the current situation. We do have some lightning strikes happening in the U.S. here around the Texas-Oklahoma border. There are some thunder showers there around Dallas. One north of Sulphur Springs, one around Fort Worth. So there's thunder rolling in there Thunder rolling in there around Fort Worth, around Eagle Mountain Lake. Sounds lovely. Perhaps a future spot for some bass fishing. Anyway, there's your full planet lightning map from lightningmaps.org. Next time you hear thunder, check it out. By the way, this video does include a paid affiliate / sponsor. Today's featured product is Focus Mushroom Gummies. Now, I think I misspoke a couple days ago saying that there was cordyceps mushrooms in the Hemp Lucid Focus Mushroom Gummies. There's not. It's lion's mane. It also has tyrosine, theanine, caffeine from green coffee extract, cannabigerol, cannabidol, and tetrahydrocannabinol full spectrum oil. So if you haven't checked those out, check out the Focus Mushroom Gummies. That's today's featured product from our affiliate / sponsor. Make sure you enter the promo code SMASHOMASH to save 10%. That'll save you like $6 on that. 10% savings by entering the promo code SMASHOMASH for your Hemp Lucid order. Also use the link below the video to link to the Hemp Lucid shop. The Focus Mushroom Gummies, I take them regularly, so check those out. They will not make you jittery. However, they will make you more focused. Perhaps. Let us know in the comments if you've tried them out. You can find links on the homepage of the Hemp Lucid shop as well as below this video. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. SmashOmash.com is the homepage. And if you want to support the channel, become a member of the Smash Team. For additional content, SmashOmash.com/Smash Team, also linked right there. And let's close this mother out with US Doppler, clouds and fog, and water vapor. So there you can see this low that we talked about yesterday. It's kind of over Lake Michigan right now. There's the full 50 states view, and you'll be able to see that counterclockwise rotation there. Somewhere in between Grand Rapids and Milwaukee, perhaps. You'll get a better view with the clouds and fog map. There's the 3.9 micrometers infrared radiation. And that low is pretty much right over the southern portion of Lake Michigan there. It's actually closer to Milwaukee than it is to it's closer to Grand Rapids there than it is to Milwaukee. Anyway, that low pressure is kind of weak. It's right about here. It's kind of weak. It doesn't have a lot of moisture with it. You can see all this dry air around here. That will not help to strengthen things very much. And make sure you strengthen our algorithmic nonsense by pressing like, subscribe, and share. Also, leave a comment. And if you're new to the channel, thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing that it exists. Here's the recap. US Doppler radar. And those storms are rapidly moving to the east-southeast there from the Dallas area. Here is your clouds and fog view. And there is the water vapor map. Rapid cloud nucleation there in East Texas. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to the Daily Space Weather. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And I'm headed back to the bunker to get away from all this scary, scary stuff overhead. Oh my God, the sky is falling, folks. Better head to the bunker. Better head to the bunker. See you soon. And may that solar wind be at your back. What?